I'm all about finding the systems that work for the individual. And like speaking about, you were talking about how people might see fasting as restriction. Um, some thoughts surrounding that. One is that and you mentioned this with like the freedom, like I personally find freedom in boundaries and rules that work for you. So it's kind of like we couldn't, like, just think about like the roads. We couldn't drive as a society and have roads if we didn't have like stoplights and lanes, and
Yeah.
like that's what makes
Yeah.
everything work. Like if we didn't have
Mm,
that, nothing would work.
that's
Well,
so
maybe if you're
true.
driving in Rome, but
Yeah,
besides
exactly.
besides that, but my point is that when you find the system that works, then you can actually live freely and do what you want to do.
Welcome to I Think I Can podcast. My name is Luella Young. I am a woman who believes that we, like wine, get better with age. Age brings us wisdom, intuition, and a level of sophistication that is beyond the reach of youth. I am here to tell you that living a luxuriously rich and fulfilling life is in your reach. I Think I Can podcast will teach you to think differently in order to get different results. Allow me to show you how to do life effortlessly. This podcast is for the woman who is tired of playing by the rules of society, community, religion, parents, and partners. I Think I Can is all about becoming brave, authentic, purposeful, and strong. Listen weekly and you will find yourself living a life you could have only once dreamed of. Thoughts drive our physiology, so channel your thoughts with me into a life truly worth living. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to I Think I Can podcast. Today, I have with me Melanie Avalon. And you probably, well, if you've been in my world, have heard me talk about intermittent fasting and biohacking and longevity. And Melanie Avalon is all about that. Like that's actually, Melanie, how I found you. In the first place is somehow finding your intermittent fasting podcast. And I am just so thrilled to have her here today with me. And let me introduce you to Melanie if you're not familiar with her. But Melanie is a SAG-AFTRA actress, health influencer, author of What When Wine, Lose Weight and Feel Great with Paleo-Style Meals, Intermittent Fasting, and Wine. She is also the host of two incredibly popular podcasts, the Melanie Avalon Biohacking Podcast and the Intermittent Fasting Podcast, with now Cynthia Thurlow. However, she was doing this for, I think ever since maybe 6 months ago with Jen Stevens. And I've had Jen on the podcast as well, if you guys remember Jen. But on top of this, she's also created an app called the Food Sense Guide. And now her most recent endeavor is starting a new supplement line called AvalonX. And Melanie was a featured speaker in Dave Asprey's 2021 Biohacking Conference and has appeared in numerous publications, including USA Today, Forbes, LA Weekly, and Entrepreneur. Now, the fact that she was a speaker, and sorry, Melanie, I'll let you talk in a second, but Melanie being, a featured speaker in Dave Asprey's Biohacking Conference, I mean, that says a lot. And Melanie, I almost see you as a female version of Dave Asprey. You are all about, I think, if like really it's how to live a long, happy life. And you're so passionate about that. So anyway, well, welcome, Melanie.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here. And yes, the Dave Asprey conference, that was really surreal for me because I've been following him for so long. So that was wonderful. I was very excited for that.
Well, and I think that, same here. I mean, to think that, I mean, I only started this podcast at I think November 30th was, my first episode. And to think that now I'm actually interviewing you is surreal to me. It's a real honor to have you here. And, that just kind of speaks towards, the name of my podcast, right? I think I can. And I never would have thought I could do this, but I want to know a little bit more about you and your story. Like, I knew you were an actress in sort of, a past life. I don't know if you're still doing that, or tell me how you went from, acting to now doing what you do.
Sure. So growing up, I always loved acting. So I was always doing community theater. And then I went to USC for film school and theater, actually a double major. And that was what I focused on literally up until, graduating college. And then in the first few years after following college, also around the same time. So in college is when I started experimenting more seriously with diet. Growing up, I was always doing all the random diets to try to lose like a few pounds, like calorie counting. And it was always just,
as every woman.
Serious. Yeah. And so in college, one of the quote crazy things I tried was low carb. And that was the first thing I tried where not only was it effective for me, but I noticed a lot of other changes as well, not just weight loss. And that was when I had the light bulb moment that diet actually possibly affects us in ways that we probably don't often appreciate. And I became very obsessed with diet as well, because with keto, and I'm not currently keto, but with keto, you can measure ketones. And I was like, oh, well, this is like a scientific way of measuring fat burning. So I just loved it. And then I became more obsessed and started doing more research. And after that, probably like a year later, I found this random blog post all about eating one meal a day. And this was way before intermittent fasting. Like nobody knew what intermittent fasting was. This was a long time ago. And I decided to do it for a week. I specifically remember it was when I was working on one of my friend's film sets. And I remember thinking, okay, I'll just eat everything tonight. And then so when you're on film sets, they always have these crafty stations, like the snack stations. I was like, I'll just drink coffee and tea all day and stay busy. And I thought I would do it for a week. And I never stopped because it just was so amazing.
Yeah.
And so then when I graduated, the final piece of the dietary explorations, I suppose, was I read Rob Wolf's The Paleo Solution, which that's also surreal because now I've had Rob on my shows 4 times, which is crazy.
Wow.
It's like that. I literally almost cried the first time I had him on, literally in the episode. You can hear it. I was so excited. But that was so up until then, I thought I was like, okay, I'm fasting every day. I'm doing low carb. What difference can making these final adjustments of cutting out processed foods and gluten actually make? And that made even more of a difference. And this is all going to come back to the original question about acting. So that's what I was doing. And I really liked it because, especially doing a lot of acting and everything, I wanted to maintain a body that I felt comfortable in personally in front of the camera. And this allowed me to really like love my body, the way I, really like the way I look, and also
Yeah.
didn't have not have feelings of restriction. And so the first thing, I'm trying to think if this was the first thing I did after graduating. I think so. So right after graduating, I just dove into acting, and what I was doing as my day job was background work. So I was basically, just showing up to different TV shows and movies every day, doing background type stuff. So I was on like every show you can think of. And the setup of that was that I was meeting new people every single day. And I was also not eating every single day during like the lunches that they have, which are very, if you've ever been on film sets, especially if it's,
but I've heard, like,
yeah. If it's low budget, that's one thing. But if it's like a network show or a movie, I mean, the food situation it's like the most insane buffet, like exuberant food situation you can ever think of. Like it's crazy. I remember I was on the season finale of some show. I don't even remember what it was. And they had like a shrimp ice sculpture, like like in the food section. So during all of that, I rarely ate on set unless it was a night shoot. So people would always ask me like why I wasn't eating, and I would get into conversations about it. And not that I got tired of explaining it, but I was like, I just need to like have a resource that I can just give people so I don't have to explain as much.
Yeah.
And at the time I was dating a guy who actually was also in the entertainment industry, but also an author. And he encouraged me. He was like, you got to just write a book, because he got his start. He's like a major author now, but he started in self-publishing. So he just told me what to do and like how to do it. So I self-published my book originally. And that's when I really just started getting into the whole like world that ultimately became what I am now. I was blogging as well. And also around that time, I started getting some health issues. I realized that a lot of stuff happened, as it often does to people who go through health challenges. So I got food poisoning, which was really bad. Okay, this is how you know it was bad. When I would show up to these sets, I'm very like, it's the bane of my existence. I'm very like image conscious and like stressed about how I look. And I remember that week when I was sick, I was literally like barely any makeup, like in a ponytail, like showing up to like major TV sets and being like, I don't even care. Like that's how sick I felt.
Wow. Yeah.
But I got a colonoscopy with that and was diagnosed with SIBO. And then after that, I did an antibiotic called rifaximin that if people have had SIBO, they might be familiar with it. It helps a lot of people. It did not help me. It made me worse with digestive issues. And I got diagnosed with hypothyroidism. And then the apartment I was living in, I realized had mold. When I moved out, I realized the gas oven I was using every night was leaking gas every night that I was using it. I didn't realize that until I moved out 2 years later. So I really felt like I was just dying. And I had mercury toxicity and anemia. It was bad. I actually ended up in the hospital for that. All of that to say, it put me on a journey to figure out what was wrong with me and try to feel better. And it led to all of these crazy research rabbit hole tangents of just trying all the things and exploring and finding what would help. Especially I've never been a good sleeper. So I like tackling that was always a passion. And ultimately it led to where I am now. I launched the Intermittent Fasting Podcast with Jen about 5 years ago. And that was amazing because it was perfect timing. It instantly built an audience for me, which I do not take for granted because it's not easy to find an audience.
Right.
and then launching the Biohacking Podcast after that was where I
Mhm.
really got to do my passion topics and interview all I've had Dave actually on that show as well.
Mhm.
So,
And
so now,
how
Mhm.
long ago was that, Melanie? Because it seems like it was just yesterday when I listened to your first episode.
I know I think it was 2019. I think
Wow.
yeah. It
Huh.
does feel like yesterday. It's interesting because what's really interesting is I think it's been about, you know, 2.5 years maybe. And Intermittent Fasting Podcast has been around 5, but Intermittent Fasting Podcast, I feel like I've been doing for decades.
Yes, me too.
um,
Like, I know when you said 5, I was like, only 5?
yeah. Yeah. And then the biohacking does still sort of feel new, but yeah, but to get back to your original question about like the acting and all that. So
Mhm.
my true passion really honestly is acting in the entertainment industry. And so now my ultimate goal would be to turn it into like a film, TV show
Mm.
or
Oh.
docuseries. So that would be, yeah. And I actually have a important meeting tomorrow, so we'll see.
Oh, okay. Sending you good vibes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
But yeah, so everything, it's not the journey I expected.
No.
But I'm loving it. What I'm super grateful about is like when I started it, I mean, there were like influencers people,
Mhm.
but not really, like not as much as now. And so I'm
Mm.
just grateful that with the way technology is and social media that I, I can like create my own, like I can just, create shows and create stuff and build my own, I don't like saying the word brand, but I can like build all of that. I don't have to like audition for it. I can just do it.
Right.
So
Well,
yeah.
what's wrong with using the word brand? Because it's exactly what you would be doing. I mean, you almost like even with the supplement line, like AvalonX. I think it's a great name.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it's weird because I don't want to think about, I mean, it's weird to think that I'm like selling myself, but it is building a brand, but it's something
Hmm.
that I'm pretty obsessed with, which is sharing with people things that I really love. So,
And what I love about this is sort of you didn't it wasn't it's just sort of it's really another story about the message becomes, I mean, no, it's almost like, the meaning is why you created the message. You saw what it did for you, and therefore you wanted to, advertise that to the world, right? You were on a mission to help people, and the podcast was just a way of sending the message out to the world. Well, I guess the book and then the podcast. Is that it? Was that the
yeah.
order?
Yeah. Yeah. So the book, so I said I self-published it, but I signed with actually my dream literary agent. She also reps like Rob Wolf and Dave Asprey.
Oh, wow.
Um, Around the same time that we launched the Intermittent Fasting Podcast. So that was all around the same time. And then the biohacking was later, like we said.
Hmm.
But what I really love about that show specifically is, so like I don't think I actually have the answers to things. I'm just always trying to learn. And it can be really overwhelming because there's so many opinions, often
Well,
completely contradictory opinions. So I love with that show that I can bring on people of completely different opinions, who I respect, and
yeah.
actually just ask them all my questions. And so then people can listen and make their own decisions and their
Hmm.
own choices.
No, I've noticed that as well, because I mean, you've had everyone from, the most strictest vegans to, like other, yeah, health gurus in terms of like fiber being the answer, right? And then there's carnivore, and it's like they're all so passionate. But I think, you doing that is it's just in itself a proof that we all have our different specific physiology and biology, and even, even in terms of emotions, and the whole perfectionism is what I'm getting at. what do you call it, the bane of your existence, but it's also something that helped you, I think, be able to master the intermittent fasting as well as you did too, because, you know, you even had it in a bit of your bio, but it's sort of, you said that without restriction. And I think most people, like, you can have this life, this health, this body that you always wanted without restriction. And I think there'd be a lot of people that would look at that and kind of go, what do you mean? Like, it's all about restriction. You're telling me that I can only eat in this specified, hours, or, I mean, you can choose your own hours, but I can't eat all day is what you're telling me. To me, that's real restriction. But from someone with your mentality and your mindset, it's like, oh no, it's not restriction. It's sort of, it's the answer. It's sort of like, I'm choosing not to eat in this certain period of time. And that gives me incredible liberation and freedom. So that's what I mean. It's not just, strategy, or in terms of you becoming, an entrepreneur and doing as well as you are in life. It's not just strategy and, you publish a book and then you do a podcast and then you create a supplement line. I mean, in graduate school, so if someone had told you that, you'd be like, are you insane? That's not what, that's not what I'm going to do. Like, so it's all of it, right? It's sort of, it's mindset and it's drive and.
Yeah. I'm all about finding the systems that work for the individual. And like, speaking about, you were talking about how people might see fasting as restriction. Some thoughts surrounding that. One is that and you mentioned this with like the freedom, like I personally find freedom in boundaries and rules that work for you. So it's kind of like, like we couldn't, like, just think about like the roads. We couldn't drive as a society and have roads if we didn't have like stoplights and lanes. And like, that's what makes everything work. Like if we didn't have that, nothing would work. Well, so maybe true. If you're driving in Rome, but
exactly.
Besides that, but my point is that when you find the system that works, then you can actually live freely and do what you want to do. And with fasting, I think a key difference here is if the body didn't naturally go into a fat burning mode when it's fasted. So if it didn't do that, then fasting would seem restrictive because you would be hungry when you're not eating. And I think that would be a completely different existence or like for fasting. But because of the metabolic adaptations of fasting, because it puts you into a fat burning mode, you're literally, once you adapt, you're not hungry when you're not eating. So it's not like you feel like, oh, I want to be eating. It's more for people who haven't done it. Well, especially when people first start doing it, they often get like a really big adrenaline boost and they're just not hungry at all. But I equate it to when you're, doing some work that you really love and you're just not thinking about food, or you're excited and you're not thinking about food. So it's like that. And then when you actually do eat, and this is where the quote lack of restriction comes in, at least for me, is so some people are really good, going back to like the systems that work for individuals. Some people are really good moderationists. I am not a moderationist.
I think okay, you nailed it there then.
Yeah. So I'm like all or none. So the idea of like eating and knowing I can only eat a certain amount or can't eat as much as I want is just not fun to me. Like, I don't like that. So when I'm eating, I want to know that I can eat all that I want and, within this time period. And for me, I don't even count the hours. I just eat at night. So I just let myself eat as much as I want until I go to bed. So that's what works for me. But there are a lot of different manifestations of fasting that you can try. And then all of that said, some people like are good with just eating throughout the day. Like that's what works for them. And I have no intention of trying. If what you're doing works and you don't want to do fasting, like do you. I have like, no, I don't care. Like, yeah. So
no,
it's kind of
that I love your analogy. That's so true. Like we have to operate around rules. And when you said, restrictions, and you might have even used the word boundaries, but like, I think for individuals as well, being sort of, someone that helps, like my profession, helps people kind of individualize, and I try to empower, individuals, and like being a people pleaser would just be another example of that. Like you need to stay within, I say your lane too, like even like driving, you need to stay within your lane. You need to stay within the boundaries. Otherwise you're going to go out of alignment, and it's not going to be good. Right. So, but yeah, I never really thought of that sort of, it's not restriction. It's just, it's operating within the rules, and you created your rules in the sense because you're someone who is not a good moderator. So I really like that.
Yeah. Or go ahead.
No, because like, I mean, I did it and I did it for a certain period of time, after listening to your podcast. And maybe you guys were out for maybe a year or something like that, because I remember being able to binge on the episodes, and within about a week I caught up. So that kind of gauges, listening to an episode. Yeah, I don't know how many episodes I would, but I like, once I get into something, I'm just like, I'm all in. So, I binged on the episodes, and but like when I did it, it was very effective. And like, for me, it was like, okay, I'm losing too much weight here, and I don't have a whole lot of weight to lose. So I'm going to stop doing it. And then I fell into the right groove. Like I never was someone to really eat breakfast, and I still don't. And sometimes I try to force myself, again, depending who you're listening to, it's like, oh no, it's really important for hormones. And I'm 54 myself, and it's like, oh no, we gotta, those adrenals. And so I'm still kind of sometimes swayed into trying it, but at the end of the day, it's just sort of like, it's just not. So I found my right groove, and I found my ideal weight, I guess, and set point and all that. But and that's, it's about the journey, and eventually you're gonna just feel good doing things a certain way. And but definitely effective.
Yeah. And it really is just about, like, with your experience, finding the one that works for you. And it's funny, when I had an epiphany, I feel like I finally, in Star Wars, he says like, do or do not, there is no try. When I started doing intermittent fasting, that was the first time I was like, oh, I understand what this phrase means. Because, when you actually do find, like with fasting, you either are fasting or you're not. And you don't have to like try to do it, because you either are or you aren't.
Right.
And there's not all of these questions of like, well, I guess if you're trying to figure out your window, maybe, but all these questions of like, should I eat? Should I not eat? Should I stop eating? Should I like, all those questions are just gone. And I just find it very, very freeing. So I love it.
Like I say, I think like you nailed it when you said moderator versus, abstainer. And like, I'm definitely a moderator. Like I've seen it with so many things, like spoonful of ice cream, 2 or 3 chips, close a bag.
Oh my goodness. I can't do that.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So, but like, I think, and then maybe you won't be like that all the time, but in the beginning, it's to teach yourself that you can do it. And there's an answer for everyone. And like, I know, you and Jen will advocate, to your deathbed, that this is like, this works, and will be the way. And there'll be other people that, completely disagree with you, but it's whatever works. So, But
well, to clarify about that, like I said, I think some people don't necessarily like fasting might not be the thing for them.
Yeah.
So even within the fasting world, maybe it does. Like some people are just really good with like eating small amounts throughout the day. Like that's what they're good for. It's never going to be me. And I don't think it's most people, especially in today's society with our, over saturation with processed foods and food stimuli. But there are those rarities that it works for them. So.
Right. And then, we can really mention quickly too, the whole macro thing, right? I mean, I know you're a huge advocate of high protein. Actually, maybe speak about that a little bit, like, because I know it's always high protein with you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like amounts that I could never do from what you reported, but then you vary it between carb and fat. Like you'll either do one or the other, correct? Okay.
Yeah. So, and this is funny because, so my new co-host, Cynthia Thurlow, who's incredible. She also is very much about high protein intake, especially for women. What's funny is she's very, she does not think most women can get enough protein in a quote 1 meal a day situation. It's just funny because I'm literally the exception. Like I eat so much protein. It's ridiculous.
So like how much didn't you say like
it's
2
pounds? It's pounds every night. I mean, it's a lot. I love it. I think I've made it like the base of my meal for so long. It's literally what I love. So I just eat pounds of like scallops and chicken and fish. And, but yeah, as far as the macros go, so I think there's a metabolic magic for a lot of people on the extreme ends of the macros. And again, it's a nice analogy or analogous or whatever the word is. It's similar to the fasting in that you can have what might seem like restriction and making certain choices regarding macros that actually I find very freeing. So I find that and I would like to actually, if I ever write another book, this is a book I would maybe write one day, and it would be about how, because there's all these like debates and wars about low carb versus low fat. And I think they both work. Just if done correctly. Cause I think, a lot of people they do low carb, but they're not low carb enough, or they do low fat, but they're not low fat enough. Particularly, I think it happens more with the low fat side of things. But basically when people are pretty familiar with like low carb, and when you're in that metabolic state, you're running on fat. So your insulin's low. So fat is freely going in and out of the cells, more likely to burn fat, also more likely in a way, I don't know if I would say more likely to store fat, but you are easily also using fat and putting it into cells. So that can work really well for people for burning fat. On the flip side with low carb, it's interesting. So you can be really, really high carb. And if you're really, really high carb and really, really low fat, you don't actually store much fat from that because you mostly store the fat you eat. So if you're low fat, you're not storing much fat because you're low fat. And then carbs are very inefficient in turning into fat. So especially when combined with intermittent fasting, I've found that people can do a high carb, low fat diet, and like it's unlikely that you'll gain weight at the very least because you're just not having the substrates for that.
But I think it's important to clarify, the type of carbs you're talking about, right? We're not talking about granola bars and, right? Or do you think you actually can have processed carbs? And
so, well, I think when you eat it and if there's one like central tenet, I think that aligns most diets. I can't even say all because there's like the repeat world and they're all into the sugar. But one of the tenets
I never even heard of that.
Oh, I'm obsessed with repeat. I actually found him because
Oh,
I was,
Ray Pete. Oh, is he
mhm.
the fruit? What do you call it? Fruitarian? Like, no.
He's like, it's funny. I found him because I was Googling the foods I was eating and I kept finding the message boards. So like there's all these forums about people just like talking about his work. He doesn't actually have like a diet, but he has like writings. But the foods that he advocates high fruit, high like moderate high protein, gelatinous meats, not muscle meats. He likes a glucose burning metabolism. So it is like honey, and they'll even do like sugar and stuff like that.
Oh,
And it's a whole world of supplements like aspirin and like cascara and thyroid supplementing with thyroid. It's all about like high metabolism. He's not into low carb or fasting, so that doesn't align with what I do. But the foods he advocates, he's not into like high fibrous foods because of the gut microbiome. So the foods I eat are basically repeat foods, which is funny.
It's interesting, Lo, but like, because I mean, who is the fellow, like the high fiber guy you just had on?
Dr. Bolsowitz.
Yeah. Not just, but some months ago. But yeah, like I mean, they all make such great arguments, though, and I, I know, like, because and also you grow up in that era of Metamucil and I mean X-Lax and like I'm thinking about like my mom and fiber, and even in the functional medicine world, I mean they really push fiber, they really push all the cruciferous vegetables and all that. So it's just crazy. No wonder people go insane, right? Like I mean it's sort of like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah. And so like a few thoughts to that. One is I do think like whole foods is so important. And I do think the microbiome is so key. And I do think for people who can tolerate like a plant-based diet or like high amounts of fiber, like if they can tolerate that and their microbiome does well with that, I think those people exhibit signs of a healthy gut microbiome. It's almost self-selecting in a way, because the people it's like the people who can sustain that really high fiber diet are probably the people that do well on that diet, compared to the people who have digestive issues and really just can't tolerate all of those plant foods. They probably have
Right.
a more unhealthy microbiome, so they're not going to be following it. It's kind of like the healthy user bias. But so like for me, I do so well with low FODMAP, which is minimizing certain types of fibers and carbs that can create like digestive issues by fermentation. So I eat high fiber, but it's like pounds of cucumbers, as you probably know.
But I do, but is there fiber in cucumbers?
I mean, they're basically just fiber and water.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. And it's a fruit.
It's a fruit vegetable. Yeah. So, I mean, I literally eat pounds of cucumbers, and pounds of blueberries every night. So it's a very high fiber diet for me. It's just a certain type of fiber.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah. So, then one could even play devil's advocate with you as well, though, and say, now that you've healed your gut, like through SIBO and, I'm guessing like you didn't speak about how you healed it, but, well, maybe perhaps the FOD diet, but also, did you do it through what's the word I'm like looking for? Microbials, like herbal, like sort of when you said the medication didn't work, but antimicrobials.
Like antimicrobials. So I went through a period of time that I would not like to return to. That was exacerbation and desperation of trying to fix my gut issues. And I was trying everything, like the antimicrobials, like you mentioned. I
Mhm.
always felt like I need to be in attack mode and like attacking
Mm.
something in me. Ultimately, I mean, it's been a long journey. When
Mm.
I went on thyroid medication, it's funny, that actually helped way more than a
Mm.
lot of other things. And I was like, oh, this isn't even related, quote, not related
Mhm.
to, it's not a gut supplement,
Right.
but
It's a
that,
metabolism supplement. Oh, I mean, it's
yeah,
a metabolism. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that was really helpful. And honestly, for me, just the food choices are what work the best for
Mm.
me.
Mm.
And also like
Mm.
with motility, just like keeping things moving with like
Yeah.
magnesium and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So but to answer your question about like, now that your gut has healed, like, should you be able to eat these other things? And it's interesting because that's what a lot of the guests that I've had on the show do say, kind of like Dr. Bolsowitz, who we mentioned, and he wrote a book
Mm-hmm.
called Fiber Fueled.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of other, especially in the vegan world, type of people will say that. Then you have people in the carnivore world that make the case that plants are not what we naturally would have been eating in, huge amounts. And so we shouldn't need to be eating them essentially. And that, especially people who are like on the, like Paul Saladino and stuff, like the plant toxin world, they're going to be like anti-plant. I just think that, and this is just my personal decision, but I could try to eat for the quote perfect diet for the microbiome, like they say. Or I could eat based on how the food makes me feel. And I just feel better not having certain types of plants. They make me bloated. So I've just like chosen not to stress about it. Like I'm
right, exactly. I mean, you just check your blood work, and but even more intuition too. It's sort of, how does my body feel? Because I mean, even myself, maybe I could talk to Cynthia about this too. Like my cholesterol numbers are not like, they're not good despite, my health, and what I do and eat. But it's again, it's that whole cholesterol, like, and if I know you listen to oh boy, I'm not good with names today, but another,
is it a podcaster?
podcaster that is
Peter Tia.
Yeah. Peter Tia. Yeah. When he talks about cholesterol, and then you've had some of like, guests that he's had on his podcast too, that speak all about the whole, like cholesterol quandrum. And that's a real tough puzzle. And so I'm just gonna, like, sort of, despite what my blood work looks like right now, I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. I mean, because it just, and maybe pay more attention, like you said, to well, I mean, to me, it's paying more attention to my energy levels and my hormones, and how my brain feels, and all of that stuff, right? It's not always the numbers on the blood work either, but although, I mean, that's incredibly healthy. It's a starting point, but yeah. So,
the cholesterol question is, I mean, it's so contextual. So like, I couldn't speak to like your cholesterol panel specifically. And I do think because it's a big debate as well in the like diet sphere, because especially like in the low carb world, there'll be people with like sky high LDL. And they'll be saying that it's not an issue if it's not an inflammatory context, or it's more about the, triglycerides or the HDL. And I actually don't know how I feel about it. And this is actually on my to-do list, is like bring on because I haven't done a cholesterol specific episode, and I actually want to bring on two people that are like on the two sides of the coin with LDL specifically. I personally, at least where I sit right now, I do get concerned by, I get concerned by like really high cholesterol panels that, like people say are not necessarily an issue. I think I still get nervous about it.
I know.
There's so much there.
Yeah.
I don't think it needs to necessarily be like maybe as low as what conventional wisdom says, but yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's sort of I have somebody specifically looking at it now because of like my ApoB levels.
Are you ApoE4?
No, ApoE3, but like not 4, but in 3, but at the 3 level. But my ApoB is higher than I know the conventional norms. So that shows you it's a genetic trait that needs to be looked at like closer. Like a lot of the things, they can't just base it on my age or weight. I mean, there's just so many different, so what you're saying, it would be very interesting to get someone like Peter Attia on it, on your podcast with another fellow, perhaps that's maybe less cautious or more cautious or whatever, and see, where that would go. But because I'm just going to say one other thing. It's just like, women postmenopausal is another, and did they go into menopause early, and have they been without adequate levels of estrogen for a long, long time, knowing that estrogen is so cardiovascular, protective. And so, yeah, it's a lot of moving parts. But
yeah, it's something I like. There's a few topics where I just wish I had unlimited time and could just like study for like ever, because I wish I knew more. I feel like I've slowly via osmosis learned things. But I am excited to. I do need to do 2 different episodes where I interview. I really want to interview Dave Feldman. So
yeah. Like when I hear you talk to, like, it's a good thing you're not like an actual practitioner that has patients coming in to, your clinic or something like that, because like you would be burning the midnight oil, for half your patients. I think it's sort of like, where's Melanie? Oh, she's still reviewing their file and looking through research documents. And
it's so funny. Yeah. It's funny. My mom always would say, Melanie, you should be a doctor. And other people tell me that. I have zero. You could not pay me to be a doctor. I so value doctors, and I'm so grateful. It's just not, I actually don't. I think this might surprise people, and I'm not sure how this comes off, but I don't individually I don't see myself as like fixing anybody. Like I just want to give people agency to help themselves, and encourage people to help themselves. It's exhausting to me to think about like one-on-one trying to be responsible for fixing somebody.
Right.
So I'd much rather go wide and like spread the information and then, let people, but I also love so people DM me and message me like every day, and I try to answer every single thing. So I do love like talking to people. But still like because people can have agency. And I think we forget that, especially in today's world.
Well, yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, half the thing I think of, when you think about the prerequisites of getting some really good doctors out there is just, can you listen? Can you hear, their story? Like, so if they tell you that they've tried all these things, like you're not going to send them home going, well, yeah, I mean, this is like, food has nothing to do with it. I'm sorry. It's just like, I think that's what we need, is just doctors that actually listen, and to know that, you've done the work and your body, right? And that's the message you're trying to give people. So that's great. It's sort of like, hey, they can walk into a doctor's office and say, hey, I've been listening to Melanie Avalon now for 5 years. And I'm going to tell you, and here are the research papers that she's, quoted. And yeah, there you have it. So yeah, you're definitely serving a much wider audience by doing this, the work you do. Which again, okay, so in terms of giving people advocacy, I mean, the whole biohacking, you being like a master in biohacking, I think also, speaks towards that. It's like, there's so many things you can do to up level your health. And, you creating that app is one thing, but then like, I mean, your energy is amazing. It's sort of like now you've stepped into creating a supplement line. And I'm guessing like most people that invent things, you saw a need for it. So why don't you speak of the 2 supplements that you've now created and why did you choose these 2?
Sure. So there's so many things I want to do in life. And a lot of them are, I always knew I would do them, or I'm all about just like the timing and just like letting things, manifest naturally. So like, I create the content like with the shows and, I can create all of this actively. And then these other things that I want to do, I've just been of the mindset that like the right person or the right time, it'll happen. And so I always wanted to do a supplement line, particularly because it was exhausting vetting supplements myself, because the supplement industry is so sketchy. I wish there was a better word, but I always use that word to describe it because that is what describes it. Because basically you have like pharmaceuticals that are very intensely regulated by the FDA. And then the supplement world is just not. And so you can't really trust unless it's a brand that you really trust. And I really got to a point before launching my own that there was only a handful of brands I actually trusted. So there's the trust factor about, is what's in the supplement the active ingredient? Is it actually in there? Is it in the amount that it says? And then on top of that, there's most of the supplements on the market have all of these fillers and additives that I'm just not about, especially like being a sensitive butterfly. So I was always like trying to find the supplements without the fillers and that I trusted. And so I always thought it would be nice to make my own. And the way mine came about was I was doing a call with now my partner, Scott, at MD Logic. He reached out to me wanting to do more like influencer type partnership, affiliate type stuff, because I work with so many brands. So it was just like another call, like, like learning about the company. And then we really connected, and he's, cause his background is in pharmaceuticals and now he's, in the supplement world. And he actually hadn't heard, which is shocking because he's heard of everything. He had not heard of serapeptase, which it's funny. It's a supplement that I've been taking for years and years and years. It's originally, it is a proteolytic enzyme created by the Japanese silkworm. So that means it breaks down protein, and its purpose in the silkworm is that it breaks down the cocoon. So it selectively breaks down non-living tissue and does not harm the host. So now it's generated in a lab when it's a supplement. And if you take it, it goes into your bloodstream and it breaks down proteins that should not be there. So it really helps so many things. People who have allergies and sinus issues, it'll just clear your allergies. That's why I started taking it. Like I get really bad, or I used to get really bad allergies, seasonal allergies, and they're just gone. Like my sinuses are clear. It reduces inflammation. It actually has been shown to reduce cholesterol. So it might be something for you. Helps with wound healing, clears brain fog, can break down amyloid plaque. It's just really, really cool. And what's funny is Jen Stevens, on the Intermittent Fasting Podcast so was always like trying different supplements. She's not a big supplement taker.
No, I know.
Yeah, like at all. But when we first connected, like one of the first episodes, it came up in conversation and we realized we were both taking it and we were like, what are the odds? Cause like nobody it's not, it's a very,
no, you're right. It's not a typical, no.
Yeah.
supplement.
She was taking it to, get rid of her fibroids or no, yes. Yeah. Or hemorrhoids, one of them, I think fibroids, which it did, which is cool. So we kind of started like a serapeptase fan club. I mean, like we would talk about it all the time. And so we'd always get questions and the audience on that show just became a little bit obsessed with serapeptase. So when I brought it up with Scott on that original call, we were like, we should like do this. Like we should do a co-brand. And so that was the beginning of starting that line. And it was, I mean, if I thought the supplement industry was sketchy before then, like the things I learned so much about supplement creation and what goes into it. And I'm just so happy because I'm almost shocked to say this. There's really not another brand on the market that is doing everything I'm doing because I basically am making the ideal form. So the things that I do take, I want to make the ideal form.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm thinking like there's not really anything else. So like with serapeptase, for example, I've researched every single serapeptase on the market and it requires an enteric coating so that it will survive your stomach and get into the small intestine. And so companies don't usually disclose what's in that enteric coating. And so it's most likely plastic related compounds. So we had to come up with a formulation that would allow the serapeptase to reach the small intestine and not have, plastic in it. So we use an acid resistant capsule and it needed a flow agent. So we just used like a tiny, tiny bit of MCT in there and it's in a glass bottle. And there's not many supplement companies that do their supplements in glass bottles. Cause I'm just trying to, eradicate plastic. Yeah. So that was the first one. And we launched it in November of 2021. And it was amazing. It sold out overnight. And, wow. Since then has just, gone really well. I personally take it and it's like the best serapeptase. I'm so obsessed with it. And then the second supplement we launched was, it's interesting with nutritional supplements. Cause serapeptase is not a nutritional supplement. With nutritional supplements, I wish we could just get all of our nutrients from food. Like that would be the dream situation. But there are a few there are a few minerals and vitamins that can be hard because of our modern environment to get enough of, like vitamins. I'm thinking like vitamin D, for example, although that's a hormone technically. But so magnesium is one of the minerals that most people are deficient in. Historically, we got it from the soil into the food that we were eating, but the soils today are it's so magnesium depleted that most people are depleted. And the thing about magnesium is it's involved in they used to say 300, but now they're saying 600 enzymatic processes in the body. So basically everything that you're doing is requiring magnesium. And then on top of that, stress depletes it, lack of sleep depletes it, aging depletes it. So I think most people can benefit from a magnesium supplement.
Yeah, I agree.
I can say and it's rare that I would say like most people should take this, but I actually do think most people should take it.
I agree.
For like, muscle recovery, cardiac health, blood sugar control, GI motility, stress, so many things.
So many things.
Yeah. So we launched, my Magnesium 8 a few months ago and has 8 forms of magnesium, all in their most bioavailable forms, no toxic fillers. Same thing about the glass bottle. So it's going well. And now there's so many things I want to make now. So it's funny, like right now that we're talking, I can't say what they are, but there are 3 supplements, all that are basically ready, but they're all there's one final piece of the puzzle that we're waiting on. So,
okay. Yeah. So if I'm just going to guess and then,
I'll tell you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say vitamin D and omega-3s, maybe a B.
So actually none of those. I do want to make a vitamin D. I am very on the fence about omega-3s. I do think I'll make one. I do think I'll make one day, but it's going to have to be, I have a lot. I have a lot of thoughts about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about it.
Yeah.
So I'll just go and tell you. So the, NMN.
Oh, okay.
Which is a precursor to NAD.
Yeah.
I am so excited about this. I'm pretty much I don't want to say convinced, but NAD levels are basically it's a master metabolic coenzyme in the body. And like I was saying before with magnesium, literally everything that you do requires NAD. Anything with energy production and processing. And so people's NAD levels go down with aging. It's often thought by some people. I'm really good friends with James Clement, who wrote a book called The Switch. He's amazing. And he studies longevity related biomarkers in his lab. Like that's what he does. And he thinks that like post-COVID fatigue and post-viral syndrome fatigue are all from depleted NAD levels. So NMN is a supplement that it's a precursor to NAD. So we actually got the first FDA approved NMN on the market. The thing that's holding us up is, so it's like ready to go, but the thing that's holding us up is I have got to find non-plastic scoops because it's a powder. And this is turning out to be more of a challenge than I thought because it requires like tiny, tiny scoops. So I'm trying to find like bamboo or rice or even stainless steel. So I've been like contacting all of these companies. So that's what's holding that up. But it's all these things you don't think about.
How interesting. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So then we want to make a berberine, which I'm very excited about because I take berberine every day.
Yes, right. That would be great for cholesterol for me too.
Oh yeah. That's funny because people think about berberine mostly. Basically it rivals metformin for its blood sugar regulation effects. But I was doing research on it because I'm, creating a supplement for it. It has all, like, people talk about the blood sugar control, but all of these benefits, including cholesterol. So the thing holding us up with that is we're waiting on some testing. This was our first herbal supplement. So
nice.
Yeah. So we test in-house for heavy metals, mold, toxins, all of that. But because this was an herbal supplement, I wanted to do third-party testing for pesticides. Like they had paperwork showing that it was free of them, but I was like, I still want to do third-party testing. So we're waiting on that. And then we want to make a spirulina, which I'm excited about, an algae.
Okay. So in a capsule?
No, it's probably going to be powder.
Okay. I'm just curious because even though, again, that would be really beneficial for me because I had like my DNA tested as well. And they mentioned, that would be a really good supplement for me.
Was it on Inside Tracker?
No, you know what? I know they're Canadian now. I think, we can get Inside Tracker as Canadians right now. Before we couldn't.
Cool.
So,
wow.
So I'm going to look into that. No, but yeah, no, it's a company. It's a Canadian company. It's called DNA Labs. I really like them a lot for, I don't know if you've ever had your DNA tested, but it's like, I feel like they really expanded on, it's sort of like how your DNA affects, not only your mood, but what was it like? Exercise, just sort of like according to your DNA, you would be best to do this type of exercise or, a lot of different ways I never thought, they could even, even relate to your DNA. And like they talked about hormones as well for women. It's sort of an extra part of their testing that they do. So yeah, I really like them, but but I know berberine was suggested, and spirulina was suggested as well. So I'm definitely, it will be, once you get those, yeah, because I'm going to go through you. I'm not going to knowing that you're so incredibly thorough. But anyway, but getting back to the spirulina, it's a taste. Oh my God. Like I mean.
Well, that's funny. I really like the way it tastes. Chlorella, I like chlorella too. Yeah, it's definitely a unique taste. I like it.
Do you drink matcha? Matcha
No,
tea? No. See, because I kind of like, I don't know. It's what, hey, I can get past it. I know I can. If I know it's doing good work, it's just sort of like, just chug it and don't think about it.
It's so funny. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, great. I think, this is like, besides getting into like the details of your biohacking, I will, they can step into your podcast for that. But I think, well, maybe just mention I know that you were asked this question before, and I'm trying to think of the answer, but I know it's difficult for you to choose the most, if you had to like choose one biohacking, tool that you have, the one that you love the most, but can you narrow it down to one, or?
It's so hard. So, okay. I think I have a two-part answer. So I think the one I love the most is probably cryotherapy, cold exposure.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because every time you talk about it, I'm just thinking, Melanie, come to Canada. You will not have an issue with that. You can be cold almost all the time if you want to be.
Yeah, no, it's so I love the cold. So
yeah, no, I do too. As much as I complain about winter, I just like, but okay, sorry.
No. Yeah. So like every day I go do a cryotherapy session in a cold chamber. So it's like I always forget. I think it's -270 degrees maybe for 3 minutes.
Wow. So what is it, like in water, or just it's the air?
It's air. It uses nitrogen.
Okay, interesting.
Liquid nitrogen. So
wow. Did you have to build that up 3 minutes?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember, because I've been doing it every day for so long. They have like where I go, they have like 4 levels that get colder and colder. So I think I started at 3 minutes, but I started at the warmest level, which is still very cold. But
okay.
So I probably did that for a few days, and then I did colder for a few days, and then colder for a few days, and then finally got to the coldest. And now I just jump into the coldest. And if I don't do, I do notice if I don't do it for a few days for whatever reason, which is very rare. It's only really when I got like with COVID and stuff like that. When I jump back in and jump straight to the coldest, it does like burn again a little bit. Ooh. but you get used to it. And then you don't get that like burn feeling. I just love the way it feels like, and there's not that much, because I do sauna as well every day. There's a lot of research on sauna. There's not a lot of research on cold, but I mean, I had like Wim Hof on the show, which is
it's quite the character.
he's like, literally, that was the most motivational conversation I've ever had in my entire life. He will just make you want to like change the world, but and change yourself. But there is more and more studies on cold, and I've just personally experienced the benefits. The mood boosting effect and the anti-inflammatory effects are just really wonderful for me. And I see when I wear a continuous glucose monitor, I see the effect on my blood sugar levels. Very beneficial. Wow. There's like a crazy spike that happens, and I don't know. I think it's from the sensor freaking out from the cold. But then it goes down lower than it was before, and it stays low for the rest of the day.
Okay. Well, so that would also be like, I would think a stress response, like you're stressing your body out. Wouldn't that be the spike?
Well, so that's what I don't know. I don't know if it's a stress response in the body dumping glucose.
Yeah.
Or if it's I thought it was that, like the glucose, but I've talked to some different like people more involved with CGMs, and I think it's probably more from just the sensor.
Okay.
But I'm not sure.
Okay. And then do you sorry, I'm kind of getting off the like, okay, so cryotherapy, but do you pair that right away with the heat? Like, is it a back and forth thing, or you do it separate times?
You can. People do that. The only time I've done that is when my sauna at home was broken and I needed to do sauna where I get cryo. And so I would do it, do the sauna, and then I would do the cryo. But in my normal daily life, I do cryo every day, late afternoon, early evening. And then I do a sauna session at night, later. So I love my infrared sauna.
Right. Yeah. No, I've heard you talk about that. How much square space does that take up?
So I have the Sunlight and Solo unit that is amazing, because it's basically, if you're like me, like living in an apartment, sort of, it's like this dome thing. So I'm looking over at it right now. I have it on a twin, I got a twin bed, metal frame. So that's the amount of space that it would take up. And then it lays on top of that. And then you lay inside of it, and then your head is out of it. So it's wonderful because I can I have it orchestrated so that I have this like arm that holds my phone over my head. So I like do work and read and emails while I'm just like laying in it every night. And it just feels so good. I sweat. I feel like I just feel like cleaned out. I get like that I get a heart workout.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. There's nothing like it. I know, like we have a cabin at like on a lake, and that's in Ontario. So that's about 2 hours away from us right now, and a neighboring province. And the lake is very deep and is very big. So it's typically, on a good day, it's about 78, and, but 68 would be probably the coldest that I want to be in there, 67, 68. But then we also have a sauna, like a wood burning stove sauna. So not the same type of intensity really, but I mean, you can put water on the coals and get it really, but I mean, it's like, I feel like I'm in Finland when I'm doing that. Right. And there is nothing better. I know what you mean too, about like bringing up your heart rate. Even it's just sort of like, it's so invigorating. It's like, it's like doing a workout, but you just sleep so good. So you're very lucky to have, in Atlanta, like, I don't think we have that here, even, where I am, like the ability to do a cryotherapy session, but maybe it's because, half the year we can just step outside.
Freezing. Yeah. No, it's so funny. Like speaking about the workout, because the studies on sauna, especially in like Finland and stuff like that, are very convincing for the cardiovascular benefits. And it's just funny because one of my recent episodes, I don't know if you listened to it, was with Mark Sisson.
Yes.
And I think I mentioned the sauna
on the way to the lake. I was listening to it.
Oh yeah. I mentioned the sauna. He made some comment, like, I don't remember exactly. It was something like, don't kid yourself that like doing a sauna is the equivalent of like, working out. But from the data, it's pretty, as far as just from like a cardiovascular, like health benefit.
Oh, for
I
sure.
I think it's pretty comparable. Like just for that one metric.
Yeah.
So
see what I think is great about it, like, sort of like in argument with what Mark was saying too, though, is it gives you that intense like cardiovascular challenge, but it brings you down to homeostasis again, quite quickly, right? Which is a lot better than the chronic stress of doing, let's say, a marathon or something like that.
Like marathons are not, I don't like making blanket statements, but most people, I don't think they're benefiting themselves in the long run with that.
No, and being a marathoner myself at one point in my life, I know now why I did it. I did it more for mindfulness. I'm not going to even say meditation. Some people say it's my meditative time. I'm just like, no, it's your mindful time. It's sort of you're allowing your thoughts to go in and out, of your head. It's sort of like planning your day, and then to me, that means, at the end of the day, you can put your head down on your pillow and not be in your head all night, because you've given your mind that time to allow the thoughts to come in and out. But yeah, like that was the number one thing for me is sort of the mindfulness piece. But yeah, there's different ways of doing that. That's not so hard on your body.
That's exactly how I feel about exercise, actually, or not exercise. I like people who go to the gym and do like chronic workouts, especially like things like cardio. Like if it's your mental thing and it makes you feel good and it's like what gives you your endorphins, like I think it's great. I think people approach it often with the wrong goals, or especially people who think that like the way to lose weight is to just run it off.
Yeah. Calories in, calories out.
Yeah. So
yeah. 100%.
But I'll just put the one like small second answer to answer your question. So I would do cryo as my favorite, but then the second thing would be, I think all the biohacks supporting sleep are just really important, especially if you're not sleeping. I just think sleep is so important. So I do so many things biohacking related to support that.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, really important.
Okay,
I actually have this, I have this like new product that just showed up this week that Cynthia introduced me to the company. I'm excited to try it. It's supposed to like really, really help you fall asleep. It's like this little thing that you hug and it like vibrates. I'm like, I haven't tried it yet. But yes, I love the.
I'm envisioning like a huge stuffy or something.
It looks like an egg or something. It's still in the box, but Cynthia swears that she like uses it and just like falls asleep. So
what the heck?
I know.
Well, no, I'm really glad you mentioned that, because it is so important, especially for women. I feel even more so. I don't know why. Maybe it's because we're such thinkers and planners, and it's hard to shut our minds off at night, and worriers, like as mothers, and guilt, but so maybe we should just I kind of want to give the listeners, and then I better let you go, but like sort of let me see no, you just say it, because I can name probably about 3 off the top of my head that I know you would use to help with your sleep, but maybe just speak about that a little bit.
So like 3 of my favorites.
Yeah, let's say 3 of your favorite sleep, or if there's, or 5, or like whatever the ways that you help yourself.
Well, so things people can do for free.
Yes.
Would be, or mostly free, would be turning down your air at night. So
yes,
environment. So this is like not free, but cheaper, like blackout curtains.
Yeah.
Like making sure it is black. The most profound things I find for me, like these are the things that even if I'm traveling, I bring, or I wish I had. So like blue light blocking glasses at night, only, minimizing your blue light exposure. I light my apartment with red light at night and wear blue light blocking glasses every night. I have an Uller, which is a mattress cooling device, and that is a game changer for me. And then probably only using your bedroom for like sleep and sex, nothing else, no working, like don't even go in your bedroom during the day. You really want to associate it with sleep. And then like when you're waking up, like bright light exposure right upon waking. And then I love my Oura ring, which tells me how I slept. So it's helpful for like monitoring how things might be affecting me with sleep. I can think of 5G. Do you still?
use
I
that?
turn that's good. So I turn off Wi-Fi at night.
Yeah.
I turn it off. I always have it off. Like I'm hardwired right now, unless I'm doing work on my couch on my laptop, then I turn it on. But
Oh, wow.
yes,
Okay. Yeah.
I'm actually developing, I don't know if you've heard me talk about it. I'm developing right now a product that you will put on your bedstand, and it's so that you can, because I put my phone into airplane mode at night.
Mm-hmm.
But it will be something that you put on your nightstand that will charge your phone and also block you from the EMF. So you can have your phone on, because I know people need to have their phone on just in case, like emergency calls and stuff. So it's going to address that issue. I'm really, really excited.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You'll make a lot of moms happy for sure.
I know. I just need it, because I remember my mom has like given me lectures like, Melanie, like you have to have your phone on. I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't. So like, so I just don't, I put it on airplane mode every night. Because the way I see it is, I mean, if something really awful happens where it's an emergency, I will find out by the morning, like once I turn on my phone.
I know a lot of people would. I don't think I've ever said this before, but I never take my phone into like the bedroom with me. And what was the other thing? Well, magnesium.
Yes, supplements wise, I really benefit from CBD. CBD is really unique. Some people, people respond differently.
Right.
But for me, it's really helpful. I love the brand Feels. I don't know if I'll ever make a CBD, just because I love Feels so much. Like they actually, I might someday, but they're making what I would make myself. So but and then I've been I've been experimenting with melatonin. I was on the fence about melatonin for a long time. But now I'm much more open to it, even like in higher doses, for its antioxidant effects. I like Kirk Parsley's sleep remedy supplement. That one's really good. But yeah, so there are some supplements that can help for sure.
Yeah. Okay. No, great. I'm glad you just reviewed that, because that can be a real horrible issue for a lot of people out there. So, is being able to stay asleep and fall asleep. So,
yes. Oh, and two last things that reminded me. If you do have your phone and you wake up, like not looking at it, so like not checking the clock, not having a clock in your bedroom.
Yeah.
And also, if people listen or read his book, I've interviewed Dr. Michael Bruce, The Power of When, twice, and he does sleep chronotypes. And that's a very empowering book, because he talks about the 4 sleep chronotypes, and it makes you realize that there really are people who are morning people and people who are night people and people who are dolphins like me who just never want to sleep. So I think it's empowering, because I don't think people should, I mean, it's hard, especially if you have like a 9-to-5 job, but probably in the long run, it's healthier to have a consistent sleep schedule, even if it's not in line with like society, compared to an erratic sleep schedule that is half of the time in line with society. So like I go to bed late and get up late. And that's what works for me.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's a really important point to bring up as well. And then you remind me too, like, I mean, it's all about bio-individuality, and so many, like, that's what we talked about, I think, throughout the podcast. But when you talked about eating the most of your meal at the end of the day, you would also, argue the idea that you need to have like 2 or 3 hours, prior to bed in order to get proper digestion. Because don't you, squash that idea as well?
Yeah. So I do think for most people, that's what works probably better, to have that time. And I did a really long blog post on this. Maybe you can put a link to it in the show notes.
Sure.
I was like, okay, I'm going to look at all of the research I can find on meal timing and eating early, eating late, look at what the findings are. And I'm going to try to just be completely unbiased and see, what does it say? And what's really interesting is just how biased the studies are. So like the studies will like say stuff, but you can just tell they're written by somebody who's like pro like breakfast eating. It's actually very frustrating.
Well, for sure. Yeah.
But like looking at that, walking away, I thought it was pretty clear that probably the best eating window for most people is late afternoon to early evening before the sun sets. So like 4 to 7 for like most people, just based on like purely trying to be unbiased. And you can read the blog post to see why I came to that conclusion.
Okay.
That said, I eat really late. Like that's what works for me. And I don't, I sleep better on a full stomach. I don't have the issues with blood sugar control. So I really think it's about, finding what works for you. I do think most people, if they're eating all throughout the day and eating late at night, that's probably not going to work. I think you do need that fasting period to balance it out, but,
yes.
Good. I eat late. I eat a lot and I eat late.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah. Like it's not just because, Melanie eats late and it doesn't affect Melanie. It's because, Melanie also has given her digestion a break for the majority of the day. So yeah, I'm glad you brought up that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thanks so much. I think this has been a wealth of information. I really appreciate you coming on today. So
thank you so much for having me.
And we will, I say link all your stuff in the show notes. We will, but at the same time, just type in Melanie's name, Melanie Avalon, and you're going to have links to her book, her supplement line, I'm sure, her website, her podcasts. So this woman does the work, so you don't have to do it. I'll just say that.
Do you mind if I, because I just realized I didn't even mention the name of the supplement line. I was going to give a code.
Oh, yeah.
If they want.
Yeah.
I got to get better about that. I just like go on tangent. So the actual supplement line is AvalonX, AvalonX.US is the website.
Okay.
And they can use the coupon code Melanie Avalon. That will get them 10% off site wide. Or if they get subscriptions of anything, it's 15% off. And they should definitely get on my email list for that because I do a lot of specials. Like right now, this won't be relevant once you air this, but like today, for example, is the last day for magnesium subscriptions where you get 25% off for life, which is exciting. So the email list for that is at avalonx.us/email list. And that's where people can get updates. But melanieavalon.com is my website, ifpodcast.com. And Food Sense Guide is the app that we mentioned. And then obviously the shows. So the Intermittent Fasting Podcast and the Melanie Avalon Biohacking Podcast. So
yes. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, again, thanks so much. And thanks for the work you do, Melanie. Thanks for getting it out there.
Thank you for having me. This was really, really wonderful. I really appreciate it.
Yes, me too. Okay, have a great rest of your day. And for everyone else, I'll see you next week. Bye.
You too. Bye.
Thanks once again for joining me on another great episode of I Think I Can podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe below so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And until next week, treat each day like it was your last, because each new day is a privilege that we shan't take for granted. Cheers and have a great week. Bye-bye.